To my dear, beautiful and wonderful friend, Shavua Tov. Why we're here? So, a very dear friend of mine donated a substantial amount of money to tzedakah, to charity. And he said the following, he says, listen, I'm giving this to the institution that I'm giving this to, but can I ask something of you? What? People usually ask things of me. Can you sit in front of a camera and share? Share whatever you want. Make it short because I'm busy, and then send it to me. So I'm fulfilling my part of the bargain. What we're exactly going to share, I don't know yet. I have an idea for now, though. As people know who know me, I have a very deep interest and passion in understanding the human psychology, in helping people get from point A to point B. Why? To improve their lives, to feel better, to feel more self-worth, more fulfilled, to come to a place where they can give back to this world. As the famous saying goes, the rent of the world is chesed, it's the giving. So I would like to share the following thought or the following experience. And the goal is it should become an experience for us. And that is, I merited to spend many wonderful years with my grandfather. My grandfather who, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how we look at it, he graduated from this world a couple of months ago. And he was a very wise man, a loving man, a very sincere man. And I learned a tremendous amount from him. I remember many years ago sitting around a table eating a meal. And we were discussing the idea of wisdom. What's wisdom? So I said to my grandfather, I said, can you please tell me what wisdom is? Help me understand what wisdom is. And he says, listen, there's a slight problem because my definition of wisdom changes. The more I learn, the more I develop within myself, my understanding of wisdom becomes more amplified, deepened, broadened. So I can share with you a couple of ideas about wisdom that I'm working with now. I said, that's good enough for me. My grandfather, as a side point, he was a very wise person. And one reason he says he was a very wise person is because he hung around wise people. And I know he always told me to look at how people are, what they do, what they become. Through that, you can glean the deepest pearls, diamonds. So he said to me the following. He says, I'll tell you something. There's two things that I've noticed with so many of the wise people I hung around. I'll tell you the first one and then the second. The first idea he expressed is that a lot of wise people that he knew, they never kept a piece of information that they read, they saw, or they spoke about in their heads. They always found the first opportunity to express that in their daily reality, whether it be implementing a certain habit, healthy, good habit, or whether it be reading another piece of material in order to be able to translate that which was seen, felt or heard in a foreign text from the reality-based text. So that was one thing that they always did. They became what they learned. I remember a story, and it's a very beautiful story. The Divrei Chaim, one of the Hasidic masters, he was with a colleague of his. And as they're sitting round the table, the colleague who was less a stature of a rabbi to the Divrei Chaim, he turns and he says, listen, I don't understand something. You became such a big rabbi, you became such a big rebbe, and okay, I've got my avodah, I'm doing my work, but it's not like what you're doing. What's the difference? We had the same mentors, we learned the same books. Why? What's the difference? The Divrei Chaim, Rabbi Chaim Halberstam, he closed his eyes and he thought for a minute and he says, your answer isn't in what you said. You learnt the books, I became the books. We both learnt the moral, ethical texts of Orchot Tzadikim, the ways of the righteous. But you kept it as information, you didn't live it, I lived it. That's the difference between us. I lived what I learnt, I took what I learnt and I built it into my daily habits. You kept it as information, a nice idea. The first lesson is that the wise person has the ability, learns if he doesn't know, if she doesn't know how to do it. But they learn to translate something that they've seen, heard or thought. If it's worthwhile, they translate it straight away into a habit. And they become that which they learned. The second experience that my grandfather expressed to me was as following. He said that the wise person has the ability to look at situations differently. This is a little bit more sophisticated and it takes practice, but they learn information and they play around with that which is going on, looking at situations differently, asking questions. And with that, they have the ability to either keep a status quo or turn a situation so it's on their side. So I said, can you give me an example? He says, yeah, I'll give you an example. 2 examples. When a person has a problem, where do they go to? They go to a wise person. Why do they go to a wise person? Because the wise person can do 2 things. Number 1, the wise person has the ability to potentially look at the situation differently and to create or find or share a solution. And as well, when somebody engages with a wise person, say for example, a person gets upset or annoyed with a wise person, what will the wise person do? You find that the wise person's not going to jump in and get emotionally involved and say, lose their temper, lose their cool. No, they'll do 2 things. Either they'll remain silent to try and keep a status quo, or they will engage in order to turn the situation and make it into something more than it is now. Better, different. The first idea of wisdom, my grandfather said, everyone can do. Everybody could do. You could do that now. You could start today to take a piece of paper and while you're reading something, if it's worthwhile, write it down and figure out, explore, express how that could be taken and lived. The wise person lives what they learn. They live their learnings. The second aspect of wisdom, having the ability to look at situations differently, having the ability to either keep a status quo or to turn the situation that it's going in a more desirable direction, that takes practice, but everyone can do that as well. As I came out of this conversation with my grandfather, I went to take a piece of paper and I wrote down a couple of things and I started to implement both of them. It really works. What we're going to discuss next time, I don't know. But what we discussed now is just fine. So I give us all a blessing that we can be of a nature, we can create good healthy habits, that we can become what we learn, and hopefully always striving to become more full, more healthy, more well, and have the ability to take that which is in front of us and either keep the status quo or turn it, that it become more desirable for what we need to make this beautiful world we live in a much better and healthier world. Thank you very much. Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week.